Hello and welcome to this special report from Black and White on the issues of today that are important to all of us. In this special report, you will hear from important people who are knowledgeable about the subject matter we're going to discuss so you can keep abreast of the important issues of today. Now, let's go to Dan and Daryl. This is Dan Perkins, co-host of Black and White, and I want to tell you about a new service we are offering our listeners who have seen their freedom of speech taken away. We want to give it back to you. Join the conversation again by stepping on the American soapbox and tell America what you think about the issues that are confronting America. Join the conversation. It's free. Go to blackandwhites.us/America's Soapbox. The rules are simple. Not longer than 3 minutes, no attacks, racial or others, on other people, and no uncivilized language. Think about what is bothering you. Then get out your camcorder or your smartphone, write a script, push the record button. Check that you comply with all the rules, and if you think you do, log on to blacksandwhites.us/America's Soapbox and upload the link to your message. Check back with us in a few days and see if it's available for everybody in America to watch. Tell your friends and family to take their turn on the American Soapbox. I'm Dan Perkins. Welcome back to the program. I'm Dan Perkins, and joining me today is my partner, Daryl Neely, and we have a wonderful, wonderful guest. I'm really looking forward to talking to Stacey, but just a couple of observations. I want to ask my audience a rhetorical question. And if we have anybody out there who is a scientist that studies viruses, I'm asking this question to you because I've not been able to find an answer from the state of Florida Health or the CDC or the FDA. Last week, we got a report that 93% of all of the hospitalizations for the virus were Delta. Now, if 93% of the people that are going into hospitals have Delta, what happened to the original COVID-19 virus? Where did it go? Did it disappear? How do we go to almost 100% of one and 0% of the other? I'd like to know what happened. That said, we're going with issue with Stacey. Stacey Washington is from the National Center for Public Policy. She's co-chair. She's a fourth generation military. Thank you for your service and your entire family's service. She's very active in politics and a wonderful person who has committed her life to helping people all over this country. And she's very important to us because she is going to kick off a month-long discussion of another freedom that we're talking about. First was freedom of expression, freedom of speech. Now we're going to talk about the Second Amendment. Stacey, welcome to Black and White.
Thanks for having me today.
What made you to get interested in the Second Amendment?
So my dad is in law enforcement. He just retired from his second career in law enforcement. His first one was as an active duty service member in the Army. He was a military policeman. He was enlisted. And so I grew up with him wearing the badge and the gun and shooting and hunting and doing things like that when we were stateside, fishing. So it was really just a part of my growing up. And then as an adult, I was not really as firearm minded after I separated from the military. My husband and I moved to the Midwest, started our family, and we were not really concerned with firearms. And then as time wore on and the kids began to get a little older and they were in grade school, we began to notice that certain areas of town had higher crime rates and that there was an overall sense that we maybe needed to be a little more active with our firearms. So we bought some and we went shooting, and pretty much we haven't looked back from there. It's been a real learning experience because so many people own firearms and it really isn't a niche. The reputation is you have to be former military, former law enforcement, or you have to be like a hunter or someone who, wears those kind of forest green outfits all the time. And those are the only people who own guns. When the truth is, lots of women are firearm owners, especially recently. And when you look at why people buy firearms, it's just as varied as why people wear certain types of shoes or live in certain neighborhoods. It's really personal preference. And a lot of Americans own firearms for every reason under the sun. So we kind of fell into that category. We bought guns and then we got concealed carry certified. And then I took a few advanced courses and started going to the National Rifle Association annual meetings. And it just took off from there. And I'm a real proponent of it because it's the equalizer for women. Women normally have lower muscle mass than men, are smaller in stature. And so with that being the case, for your own personal protection, a firearm, it equalizes things for women and men. And for everyone in general, higher firearm ownership decreases crime. So areas that have more gun freedom have less crime. Areas that have more stringent laws like Chicago, they have the most stringent laws on gun ownership, as does New York, and they have high crime. So the correlation is there. It's pretty obvious and ready for people to see.
Stacey, one of the things that I've been concerned about is not so much that there's been record sales of guns, that Americans who in the past would have turned to the police for their protection now find themselves in cities where the certain political parties and peoples of persuasion want to defund the police. And we've heard horror stories where police forces have been significantly reduced, where it can take hours before the police has an opportunity to respond. I think that the significant increase in gun sales in some part is the realization on the part of many Americans that they can no longer count on the police when they need them because they've been diminishing, and they're under a lot of pressure to not respond. So the Americans have decided to exercise their right under the Second Amendment to keep and bear arms, to protect themselves. What do you say to that?
Well, there was, so for 2020, there were 8.2 million more people who bought firearms. So new gun owners, 8.2 million. That's a significant increase. Over 22 million firearms were purchased that year. So you can look at the data that comes from the federal government for the background checks, and you can see that as the rioting increased over the year, as the defund the police movement became louder and louder, I don't say more popular, I say louder and louder. They were given a lot of media attention, and it was presented as something that most mainstream Americans want. But 82% of Black Americans polled want more policing in their neighborhoods. They want more positive interactions with the police. So this is a narrative that's been framed as something that Black people want, which is completely untrue. Something that people who live in cities want, completely untrue. It's a very loud and vocal minority of individuals on the left who want the police defunded and have succeeded in doing so in Minneapolis and New York City. But that's not popular with constituents, voters, and people who are just, kind of the people you're driving down the street with. When you glance to your left and your right, you see people in cars. Those people do not want fewer police. So when you see people buying more firearms, it's a reaction to what they're seeing everywhere on the news or personal experiences. So a lot of people, for the first time in their lives during the rioting that was going on across the country, they felt unsafe in a way that was not normal, not sitting at dinner time or looking on your phone and seeing a story in the news in your area, in your city, or in the suburbs near you where there's been a break-in or some crime. That makes you feel unsafe, but it's tangential and it's removed from you. When you see people marching through your neighborhood, or you see businesses burned down that you used to go to, and especially for Black Americans who were hit hardest by the rioting and the looting and the burning, it was in their neighborhoods where this happened. It wasn't the suburbs, it was inner cities that people worked and saved and emptied out their 401ks, Black businesses that were built on blood, sweat, and tears and a lot of ingenuity and hard work. And they were literally burned to the ground in one night, and all of that went up in smoke. And so the idea then was, how do we defend ourselves? And there's this meme online about rooftop Koreans, because during the Rodney King beating and then afterwards in the riots, You saw Koreans defending their neighborhoods, their businesses, their small businesses. They would get on the roof with their long guns and they would stand there and they're like, you're going to riot, but you're going to move right on past this building because we're defending it. And so there's this meme that's all over the internet, but it's not wrong. It may be a meme that people are capitalizing on, but the fact is the business owners who stood outside their doors with guns, they were able to protect their businesses. And the ones who weren't able to be there for whatever reason, probably out of fear, because who wants to face a mob, their businesses were destroyed. So when you see that, and it's not happening only in Portland, because Portland always has problems, or, New York City, huge, huge city, one of the largest metropolitan areas in the country, kind of the flagship city of America, low crime, but still, when you think of the concrete jungle, you think of New York. So if you see crime happening there, or in Chicago, it's expected almost. It's like, okay, this happens. It's a major city. They have a high crime rate. Even in St. Louis, we live in the suburbs of St. Louis. This is a very safe place to live. It's a wonderful community, very easy to live in, low cost of living. We have a horrible reputation as a crime capital of the country, top 5 every time they do the list, because our city has 315,000 people in it. And the crime is kind of concentrated in certain areas of the city. And so the crime rate is really high. If you took that same crime rate and applied it over all of the crime over the entire metro area of over 1 million people, we would drop down at, into the high 30s, or I should say high 20s for our crime rate. So people look at those things, but it's still tangential. But so the difference between any other time there's an uptick in crime and last year is that there was the rioting that went on, and it was sustained, and it was inescapable, and it was hundreds of cities across the country. And so you got to a place where for a huge segment of Americans, there was no escaping it. They knew someone whose business had been burned, or they knew someone who lived in a neighborhood that was materially affected by rioting, looting, or burning. And at that point, then you become really serious about taking care of yourself. And we also saw the huge migration, like people moving out of the city and moving into small towns, people moving from states with high gun control laws to states with low gun control laws. People really made a lot of changes. And that also dovetailed in with the pandemic, which you mentioned. You have all these people who are working from home, and it starts to look like they're going to work from home forever. So they move to the place they want to live in. Lots of people moved to the beach. Lots of people went to the beach and rented long-term rentals for months on end and worked virtually from the beach so that they could just get away from what they considered to be, very high stress, being near the epicenter of things that were going on that they didn't like. So it's a natural reaction whenever a leader like the president talks about gun control. People go out and buy more guns. Whenever we have high crime, people go out and buy more guns. It's a natural reaction to want to protect yourself. It's the same as if you're at home, like me. If I see something gross or disgusting, if someone spills something and I clean that one thing up, then you usually end up cleaning everything around it. And before you know it, you're on a cleaning tear. It's the similar thing. Once you get started, you just want to complete the action. You want to feel safer. So I encourage people to follow that instinct, but don't just buy a gun. Also go to the range and train with it. Also, maybe at the range you're at, take a class or two and be really comfortable with it. Don't just buy it and stick it in a drawer, or buy it and start carrying it if you're in a state that has, open carry or concealed carry, where you don't need a permit or training. Get some training and be comfortable with it, because it's for your safety. But you don't want to be on the other end of that where you're unsafe because you're trying to be safe. So, get to know the tool and how to use it properly.
I have 2 quick questions, and I'm going to turn it over to Daryl. First quick question is, I couldn't understand, still don't understand, how people can promote the idea of defunding the police and not expecting the crime rate to go up. They seem to be shocked when the crime rate went up in Minneapolis or Portland or Seattle or Chicago or New York or Philadelphia or Baltimore. They were surprised that it went up. But it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that if you defund the police and you don't have a force there, the bad guys are going to expand. Can you figure out what happened there?
Well, I point to there's in my mind, I don't have any. I'm not an anthropologist, but in my mind, I see people as being individuals who think emotionally, They're emotionally driven. So their thoughts are driven by emotion. So if they feel that some injustice has occurred, they don't go to their computer or their phone, because that's the amazing thing about having so many ill-informed people in America today, is that we all have access to more information in one day than most people had, that most people would read in their entire lifetime. You know, we absorb that much news and information. And for people who are really into using their phones for what the greatest purpose in the world is, you can look up any scripture you want. You hear someone misquote the Bible and you're not sure, you can look it up instantly. Our phones even respond to our voice. Like, how many times have you been somewhere and your phone or your watch starts talking back to you and you're not even talking to it? So we do not lack information, but what we do lack is the ability to say, wow, I saw George Floyd video with three officers kneeling on a man and he says he can't breathe and then he goes limp and now I've learned that he's died. I'm upset about that. I'm enraged. I'm angry. I want to do something about this. And those were police officers. What do we do? So instead of looking to see, well, first of all, what's the situation with police in Minneapolis? What happened with George Chauvin in the past? I mean, this is a man who had numerous complaints against him for brutality. He's someone who should have been drummed out of the force years before, but it was individuals who don't like accountability, who again deal on their emotions, who let him remain on the force so that this event could occur. What was going on with the victim, George Floyd? How did he become someone who was persistently interacting with the police? Could this situation have been avoided? In no way am I saying that he deserved what happened to him, but there are a lot of things that you have to think about before you say, I'm going to jump from this man was unjustly killed and the people who did it are now going to be investigated and prosecuted, to we need to defund the police and burn down cities across the country so everyone knows how wrong this was. One of the biggest aha moments for the George Floyd incident, for the tragedy that was his death on the national stage, is that it was one moment in time crystallized, probably a moment we haven't had since 9/11, where we collectively as a country all stopped what we were doing and we all joined together as one country and said, we are Americans and this cannot be allowed to stand. We've been attacked. Innocent people have died. Families have been shattered. And it was terrorism on American soil. And we're going to come together and do something about it. Since then, we really haven't been unified at all. We can, some of us can get together and some of us can get together on the other side, but all of us as one, it's 9/11. So George Floyd's death, it was a moment where all of us stopped what we were doing. We all sought the video online. We watched it, and it was Asian, Black, white. It was immigrants. It was illegal immigrants. It was anybody who had two eyes that worked, who was awake, saw the video and said, this cannot be allowed to pass. It circumvented political parties. It was people on the right. It was people on the left. It was the most shrill voices on each side of the political spectrum all stopped and said, wow, that should never happen. That was wrong. Those police officers need to be prosecuted. So in a moment like that, we should have, had we had the people who think with their brains and not their emotions, because that's the other side. I started to describe how people think with their emotions. The other side of that is people who are clear thinking. They may be angry. They may be filled with rage or emotion over an issue, but they know that decisions made during that time when your body is flooded with hormones and emotions, you're making bad decisions at that point. So you have to deal with the emotions. You have to, whatever you do to cope with your emotions. And then you have to say, now what can we do about this? And people who approach problems from that perspective often get better results, are more likely to band together with other powerful people to change things permanently. Because the defund the police movement is a temporary thing that only brings higher crime and carnage, but later will then be reversed. It's not a permanent solution. But police reform is. Police reform is a permanent solution. Community policing is a permanent solution. Getting the people closest to the problem to make the decision about what the police should be doing and what their oversight looks like, that's a permanent solution. So you see powerful people will go back out of their emotions and will get together with other people and create permanent solutions. And that's what should have happened. And so last year, we saw everyone in our country who lacks the ability to exert self-control over themselves tantruming like toddlers. Only a 2-year-old tantruming it's horrible. And if they get to screaming for 55 minutes, you'll never forget it. Your brain will be ringing for a week, but that's a 2-year-old. but get a 20-year-old who has access to concrete and Quickcrete from Home Depot and, bricks and sticks and bottles and shields made out of trash cans. And all of a sudden, you have a nationwide moment of chaos that lasted for 9 months. So I think that we have a great opportunity in this country. We always have, and we hopefully always will, because we have intelligence in this country. We have amazing technological access. We also have a representative form of government, which means any person you see that's elected is your employee. And as a citizen, you are the highest official in the land, because every elected official is subject to your recall or replacement. You can replace any elected official. So that means you go to them and you say, you email, you ask for coffee. Let's go have coffee together. Let's talk. You take 150 of your friends to the school board meeting. You take 150 of your friends to the municipal meeting with your county council or your mayor, and you tell them, we want some police oversight, or we think the police oversight that's here now isn't working for us, or we want to know why Derek Chauvin was allowed to continue to police these streets after he'd had 18 complaints lodged against him. Who's the person that's responsible for that continuing to happen? That person should be fired. So instead of defunding the entire police department, you get rid of the person who made the decision to leave Derek Chauvin in place. These are the kinds of things that we need to discuss. These are the kinds of actions that we need to take as Americans, because we have the ability to do that. And then, the emotionally driven people, I'm always really surprised to see them online sharing these moronic statements about we don't need police. But the first time that person hears something that sounds like a crash in the middle of the night, they don't go to their phone and send out a tweet, I heard a crash and downstairs in my basement or something. No, they pick up the phone and they dial 911. So they don't really mean they want the police to fund it. So we've got to stop giving these people so much space. These individuals are loud and they're problem creators. They don't solve problems. And we as Americans deserve to have our problems solved, not temporarily, but permanently. But I say that with a caveat. Look, we're dealing with a situation where people think of politics. It's like, on the right, we say, we're going to take our country back. Last time it was, we're going to drain the swamp. On the left, it's, we're going to resist. We're not going to allow these people on the right to do this or that. So I would just like to ask people a question. Never met a person who answered this question differently than the way I would answer it. And the question is, do you just change your sheets once? Do you just clean your kitchen once? Have you ever gone into your bathroom, cleaned it and made it perfectly clean and it smells so fresh, and then walked out of it and said, done with that for the rest of my life? No, you're going to go clean that bathroom in a week. You're going to go change those sheets, hopefully in a week, maybe 2 weeks. You're going to sweep, you're going to mop, you're going to clean your body every day. If you have any kind of caring for the people around you, you're going to clean yourself every day. So every time that we say we're going to fix Washington, no, we're not. We may go in and clean out a bunch of people who shouldn't be there, who are there for wrong reasons, there to enrich themselves, but we're never going to be done cleaning it, because it has to do with humans. And politics is a tool. Politics is not, it's not a religion. It's not for us to be like all up in it all day, every day. I do this for a living, but I also like interior design and reading books and listening to podcasts and going to Bible study. I'm like a Bible study fanatic. If you are in a Bible study and you invite me, I am there. I'm going to try to be in that Bible study until I don't even know how long. So I have other interests. I'm not just talking about politics and tweeting and posting about it and doing the radio show all the time. So if I was to be as obsessed with my vacuum cleaner, which is a tool, as people are about politics, my life would be a shambles, because the vacuum is a great tool, but it does not, I can't just be about the vacuum cleaner. So we can't just be about politics, but for goodness sakes, if we don't get more intellectually engaged as opposed to emotionally engaged, we will continue to have the dumbest people among us. And I'm using that term intentionally. The least intelligent among us will be the ones who continue to drive the conversations and rule over us. And that is just a travesty that should never be. Our kids are going to one day be like, what were they doing with what they had access to everything? What were they doing? That's what they're going to be saying about us. And I do not want that. I don't want my kids to be like, man, my mom must just have been obsessed with her vacuum cleaner as opposed to, just have been obsessed with politics, but never getting any solutions. We can do better than this.
Stacey, I can see something that you can't see. I've been watching Daryl on his camera as you've been talking, and he's been applauding you and saying yes to you. So let's give him a little bit of time to talk to you. Daryl?
America needs mom. Mom, Stacey, I'm telling you something. You remind me of Heidi St. John in Seattle. America needs mom. You need to run for office. We need a mom in this country. You are fire. I mean, I have nothing to say. I mean, you blew. Look, yes, there are 2,400 people in Chicago getting shot since the beginning of this year. Out of that, 780 people were murdered by gun violence. And most of these people never went out and practiced, used it. They don't have a heart. They don't have a conscience. America needs a mom. That's all I'm going to say to you. And you know something? If you ran for office, we'll stand right beside you here at blacksandwhites.us. Blacks and Whites, we love you. And listen, you always welcome to come back home.
Well,
We need mom. Listen, this is from an amen right here. We need a mom in this country. Somebody's going to tell the truth. We need a mom. Someone's going to show us the right way. Who would have come up with those examples? And those examples were mom. Listen, no one changed their bed sheets once. Wow. You know something? We should get rid of this. People need to understand that, number one, they are the ones that elect these representatives.
Yep.
Get them out.
Yep.
These
Yep.
representatives are hiring all these crooked people underneath. What does it remind you of? Mafia.
Yeah. Yeah. It stinks from the head. But so when what happens with us is, and we all do it. I mean, I'm on the right. But I see it. What we do is we have someone that we elect, and they said all the right things. They were amazing. They might have even given you chills to give them a standing ovation at one of their events before they were elected. But then they get to DC and they get, 18 staffers, and they get a condo in DC. And then when they come back to the district, someone picks them up at the airport and drives them all around. And then they stop pumping their own gas. And before you know it, you don't recognize them. When you see them, they have on, your month's salary in clothing on one day. You recognize the clothes. You're like, this is all the stuff I walk by in the mall. I've never been in these stores before. And this person is decked out from head to toe. And all of a sudden, because of the ability to insider trade, they're rich and they no longer listen to you. The same one who maybe sat at your kitchen table and you helped organize their campaign, or you knocked, 100 doors for them or made 1,000 calls. Now they don't know you. Now they're unable to respond to you. And the issue you sent them there to solve is still a problem. But what we do is we'll say, well, I mean, if we don't vote for him because he's the front runner, he has the most name ID, we vote for this challenger who, someone started a rumor that she's a witch, or someone started a rumor that she's, something weird, some weird rumor that you're like, that can't be true. And what happens is that rumor becomes the truth. You don't vote for that outsider. You vote again for the person who is not doing the job. And that's how we end up with these people there for 30 years. Now, let's face it. People who've been in a job for 30 years have institutional knowledge that is amazing, and they are really good at what they do. But if they refuse to respond to your concerns, if they refuse to actually do what they were sent there to do, if the same problem they ran on 20 years ago is still a problem in your district, you need to replace them. And they create these family dynasties. Have you noticed how often, we had Lacey Clay, the Clay dynasty here in St. Louis, where it was his dad, and then the dad retired and he got elected to the dad's seat. And now we have Cori Bush, she is very passionate about her constituents, but her ideas are wrong and unworkable. She believes in defunding the police. She believes that, we should have an eviction moratorium forever. I actually didn't oppose an eviction moratorium for a short period of time to allow people to respond to the pandemic and the fact that they weren't allowed to work. But 18 months, lots of people who own businesses, who own rental property are Black. So again, it doesn't matter what color you are. If you own a building and you have a mortgage on it that you have to pay and your renter's not paying you, they're sitting at home collecting unemployment. They could pay you something. They're not paying you at all. Meanwhile, you've emptied out your 401k or any savings you had. You're borrowing money to pay the mortgage on a building that you have to pay the mortgage or you lose it. So, we have bad ideas. We have people who are passionate about people, I don't doubt for a second that Cori Bush is an amazingly interested and connected person in her community, and that she loves the people in her constituency. But her ideas are terrible for those people. So we can't be emotionally driven. And I'm saying that as a woman. Everybody knows how moms can get. I'm like that about my kids. I'm like that with my husband. You know, I can be just as cool and calm and collected when it's something that's like a kitchen table issue. But then when it comes to something with my family, I'm there. The emotions are running high, but we don't make good decisions when I'm there. We make great decisions for our family when I step back from those emotions and give myself a chance to access my actual thinking center so that we can solve a problem. So, you know, we have a lot more in common than we give ourselves credit for. And the reason I know this is because when I worked on school board, I was elected to school board, first appointed and then elected. And I was on there with a bunch of Democrats, and they didn't even know I was a Republican. They just assumed I was a Democrat because I'm Black. And so we would work together on stuff, and we would disagree, but we could find common ground because it was about kids in the district. It was so close to us, our own tax dollars. What do we do with these, with this tax money? What do we do with this federal money that the government wants to give us? And what do we do about the teachers who they want less supervision time? Like they don't want to do recess in the morning. What do we do about these things? We could find common ground on that. And I often, regardless of their politics, we would get together and we would solve things because we were at a close local level. So we have so much in common. We may not agree on foreign policy, but we probably will agree on what we should be paying the trash company that picks up all of our garbage, what we should do with, our local taxing authority and them wanting to eliminate vagrancy laws, or what can we do to help the homeless and persistently homeless in our community. We can find solutions on that. So that means, by extension, we can find solutions for things at a higher level, at the federal level. But I just encourage people to get back to your local taxing authority. They have so much power over you. Start going to those meetings, make some friends, go out to eat after the meeting, have some fun, live your life. Again, this is a tool that you're trying to figure out how to use this tool to solve problems, politics, and do some of that at the local level. And then extend that new knowledge out to manage our elected officials in DC. And we really need to be willing to fire these people. That's our main problem as Americans. We do not utilize the tool the founders gave us, which is you just elect somebody else. And I want to encourage people to take a chance on someone that maybe the newcomer. Take a chance on that person because they have something to prove. They want to earn your respect. The person who's already there for 2 or 3 terms or 30 years doesn't care what you think because they feel entrenched. They feel like they have enough built-in donor base and enough people they can just call and get $10,000 donations if they don't need you. That's when they're ready to go. That's basically a piece of fruit that's overripe that needs to be thrown in the trash. Get rid of it. Get somebody new.
America needs a mom, and mom has just spoken. Dan, listen, I'm stuck, Dan. Stacey just toured the whole political thought away. She just made it simple for Americans to actually understand, justify, even within themselves. Stacey, you're a blessing. I would vote for you in 30 seconds.
Maybe more than once.
Hold on. Well, the Democrats helped me, so I'm gonna vote a couple of times. Hey, don't forget my grandmother. Oh, she died. Oh, she voted for you too. Okay. The bottom line is, with everything that's happened, I can see it from your standpoint so clear. It's just like, okay, let me just lay it out on the table. But these politicians don't want to lay it out on the table. They want to give you just a little crumb here and a little piece here. And hold on, this is going to cost you $20,000. We're going to get it from you about now. 30 easy payments. And then we're going to jack the prices up. We're going to negotiate with this other policy people over here so we can get higher rated gas. Same gas, but we call it higher rated. The system like your mom. That's all I can say. Your mom. Dan, I got nothing to say. I'm blown away, Dan. I'm blown away.
I agree. Stacey, unfortunately, we're out of time, but we definitely want to have you back. You're everything I hoped you would be. We've been speaking with Stacey Washington, who is under the Project 21 National Advisory Council co-chair, and she's been talking about a lot of stuff, but primarily about the Second Amendment, why people should have the right to keep and bear arms. Stacey, thank you for joining us today, and we'll look forward to having you back again soon.
Thank you both for having me. It was great to be here.
Thank you. This is Dan Perkins, co-host of Black and White, and I want to tell you about a new service we are offering our listeners who have seen their freedom of speech taken away. We want to give it back to you. Join the conversation again by stepping on the American soapbox and tell America what you think about the issues that are confronting America. Join the conversation. It's free. Go to blackandwhites.us/America's Soapbox. The rules are simple. Not longer than 3 minutes, no attacks, racial or others, on other people, and no uncivilized language. Think about what is bothering you. Then get out your camcorder or your smartphone, write a script, push the record button. Check that you comply with all the rules, and if you think you do, log on to blacksandwhites.us, America's Soapbox, and upload the link to your message. Check back with us in a few days and see if it's available for everybody in America to watch. Tell your friends and family to take their turn on the American Soapbox. I'm Dan Perkins. Thank you for joining us today for the special report from Black and White. If you missed any of this show, go to blacksandwhites.us, click on the archive section, and you can hear this show and many others. Thanks for joining us on Black and White, where America speaks.